Hello and welcome back to ETA. I'm not used to this. I'm the behind the scenes girl. I'm Kai Elsbar, and my team and I are dedicated to sharing with you.
I've got to stand up for this. We're in the middle of a pandemic, civil unrest, and a major presidential election. And I need you to stand up too, because we're all in this together. We promised you a 49th season. So welcome to our first virtual season, Voices of Protest. So to you, our magical audience, thank you.
Our hopes, our dreams, our voices. And so we bring you the words of our first orator, Frederick Douglass, and the brilliance of our sister, Angela Davis, and the musical genius of my sister, Dee Alexander. Protest is a constant struggle is the first of our 4 presentations. And thank you for being our magical audience.
Look at what we've done.
No, but the question is more, how do you get there? Do you get there by confrontation, violence?
Oh, is that the question you were asking?
Yeah.
See, that's another thing. When you talk about a revolution, most people think violence, without realizing that the real content of any kind of revolutionary thrust lies in the principles and the goals that you're striving for, not in the way you reach them. On the other hand, because of the way this society is organized, because of the violence that exists on the surface everywhere, you have to expect that there are going to be such explosions. You have to expect things like that as reactions. If you are a black person and live in the black community all your life and walk out on the street every day seeing white policemen surrounding you, when I was living in Los Angeles, for instance, long before the situation in LA ever occurred, I was constantly stopped. No, the police didn't know who I was, but I was a black woman. I had a natural, and they, I suppose, thought that I might be a, quote, militant. And when you live under a situation like that constantly, and then you ask me, whether I approve of violence. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense at all. Whether I approve of guns. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. Some very, very good friends of mine were killed by bombs that were planted by racists. I remember from the time I was very small, I remember the sounds of bombs exploding across the street, our house shaking. I remember my father having to have guns at his disposal at all times because of the fact that at any moment we might expect to be attacked. The man who was at that time in complete control of the city government, his name was Bull Connor, would often get on the radio and make statements like, niggers have moved into a white neighborhood, we better expect some bloodshed tonight. And sure enough, there would be bloodshed. After the 4 young girls who lived, one of them lived next door to me. I was very good friends with the sister of another one. My sister was very good friends with all 3 of them. My mother taught one of them in her class. My mother, in fact, when the bombing occurred, one of the mothers of one of the young girls called my mother and said, can you take me down to the church to pick up Carol? We heard about the bombing and I don't have my car. And they went down, and what did they find? They found limbs and heads strewn all over the place. And then after that, in my neighborhood, all of the men organized themselves into an armed patrol. They had to take their guns and patrol our community every night because they did not want that to happen again. I mean, that's why when someone asks me about violence, I just find it incredible. What it means is that the person who's asking that question has absolutely no idea what black people have gone through, what black people have experienced in this country since the time the first black person.
So the title of my talk is drawn from this freedom song. I like the irony of the last line of each of the verses. We've struggled so long, we've cried so long, we've died so long, we must be free. I've been asked to speak about the meaning of freedom during the 50th anniversary year of pivotal events in the Black freedom struggle. So let me start by evoking some of the 50th anniversary events. This is the 50th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. For more than 200 years, our forebears labored in this country without wages. They made cotton king. They built the homes of their masters while suffering gross injustice and shameful humiliation. And yet, out of a bottomless vitality, they continue to thrive and develop. If the inexpressible cruelties of slavery could not stop us, the opposition we face now will surely fail. We're also observing the 50th anniversary year of the Birmingham Children's Crusade. Vast numbers of school children, girls and boys, at the beginning of May in 1963, faced police dogs and high-power hoses. Their televised demonstrations, and incidentally, television was quite young, and it was really the first time that people outside of the South had the opportunity to witness these demonstrations, revealed to the world the determination with which Black people continued to struggle for freedom.
Don't touch me.
Get out of the car.
Don't touch me. I'm not under arrest. You don't have the right to take
You
me out
are
of my
under
car.
arrest.
I'm under arrest for what? For what?
2547 County FM 1098. Just
For
north
what?
of 290. Send me another unit. Get out of the car.
Another unit, FM 1098.
Get out of the car now.
Why am I being apprehended? You trying to give me a ticket
I
for
said
your
get
failure?
out of the car.
Why am I being apprehended? You
I'm
just
giving
opened
you a
my
lawful
car
order.
door. You just
I'm
opened
gonna
my
drag
car
you
door.
out of here.
So you threatening to drag me out of my own car.
Get out of the car.
And then you
I will
stun
light
me?
you up. Get out.
Wow.
Now.
Wow.
Get out of the
Really,
car.
for a failure to signal. You doing all of this for a
Get
failure
over
to
there.
Right, yeah. Yeah, let's take this to court. Let's do
Go
it.
ahead.
For a failure to signal. Yep, for a failure to signal.
Get off the phone.
On my school.
Get off the phone.
I'm not on the phone. I have a right
Put
to
your
record.
phone
This is
down.
my property. This
Put
is
your
my
phone
property.
down.
Sir?
Put your phone down. Right now. Put your phone down.
For a f***ing failure to signal, my goodness.
Come over here.
Y'all are interesting.
Come
Very
over here now.
interesting. You feeling good about yourself?
Stand right here.
You feeling good about yourself?
Stand right
For
there.
a failure to signal, you feel real good
Turn
about
around.
yourself, don't you?
Turn around.
You feel good about yourself,
Turn
don't you?
around now.
What are you?
Put your hands
Why
behind
am
your
I
back and
being
turn around.
arrested?
Turn around.
Why can't you tell me
I'm
why?
giving you a lawful order. I will tell
Why am I
you.
being arrested?
Turn
why
around.
Won't you tell me that part?
I'm giving you a lawful order. Turn around.
Why will you not tell me
You are
what's
not
going
compliant.
on? I'm not complying because you just pulled me out of my car.
Turn around.
Are you f***ing kidding me? This is some bull.
Hands behind your back.
Because you know this is straight bull. You full of straight. That's all y'all is, some scary cops. South Carolina got y'all scared. That's all it is. Scared of a female.
If you would have just listened.
I was trying to sign the ticket. Whatever.
Stop moving.
Are you serious?
Stop moving.
Oh, I can't wait till we go to court. Ooh, I can't wait. I cannot wait till we go to court. I can't wait. Ooh, I can't wait. You want me to sit down now?
No.
Or you gonna throw me to the floor? That'll make you feel better about yourself?
Knock it off.
No, that'll make you feel better about yourself? That'll make you feel real good, won't it? For a failure to signal, you doing all of this. In little ass Prairie View, Texas. My God, they must want.
You were getting a warning. Until now, you're going to
No,
jail.
I'm getting for what?
You can come
For
read.
what?
Come read right.
I'm getting a warning for what?
Stay right here.
For what? Well, you
Stay
just
right
pointed
here.
me over there.
I said stay right
Get
here.
your mind right. Let me. Oh, I swear on my life, y'all some a cop for a signal. You gonna take me to jail?
She's in handcuffs.
What a what a
816.
what a put. You about to break my wrist.
Stop moving.
I'm standing still. You
Stand
keep
right
moving
here.
me. God damn it.
Stand right there.
Don't touch me. For a traffic signal, you doing all this bullshit. I'm here for a traffic signal.
Come right over here. This right here says a warning. You started creating the problems.
You asked me what was wrong.
Do you have
I'm trying to
anything
tell
on
you.
your person that's
do
illegal?
it feel like I got anything on me? This a maxi
I'm gonna
dress.
remove your glasses.
This a maxi dress.
Come on over here.
Have on me. You're about to break my wrist. Can you stop? You are about to break my wrist.
Stop moving. Stop now. Stop it.
Stop resisting, man.
If you would stop, and I would tell you. Now stop.
You are such a. You are such a. No, you are.
You're yanking around.
Full traffic signal.
You are yanking around.
Signal.
When you pull away from me, you're resisting arrest.
This make you feel real good, don't it? A female for a traffic signal.
I got it.
For a traffic signal. I know that make you feel good, officer.
Go
Ain't
ahead.
seen
Take
it.
care of yourself.
I know it make you feel real good. You're a real man now.
I
You
got
just
it.
slammed me, knocked my head in the ground. I got epilepsy, you mother.
Good.
I hope I
Good.
Good.
You should have thought
This is
about that
good.
before
Okay.
you start resisting.
All right. Yeah, this is real good. Real good for a female. Yeah.
1963 was also the year of the March on Washington, which was attended by some 250,000 people. At that time, it was the largest ever human assembly in Washington. No one can deny that global popular culture is saturated with references to the 20th century Black freedom movement. We know that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is one of the most widely known historical figures in the world. Inside the U.S., there are more than 900 streets named after Dr. King. But they've been used to deflect attention from persistent social problems, the lack of education, housing, and jobs. 900 streets named after Dr. King, but also 2.5 million people in U.S. jails, prisons, youth facilities, military prisons, and jails in Indian country. I would dare say that most people who are familiar with Dr. Martin Luther King, and the vast majority of people in the world are familiar with him, I think, they know little more than the fact that he had a dream. Relatively few people are aware of the Riverside Church speech on Vietnam and the way he came to recognize the intersection and interconnections of the Black liberation movement and the campaign to end the war in Vietnam. Therefore, understandings of the 20th century freedom movement that helped us cultivate more complicated ideas of the geographies and temporalities of freedom are suppressed.
And I wonder, will we ever truly recognize the collective subject of history that was itself produced by radical organizing early on in the 1930s, 1940s? And I'm referring, for example, to an organization which was known as the Southern Negro Youth Congress, which has largely been excised from the official historical record because some of its key leaders were communist. How can we counteract the representation of historical agents as powerful individuals, powerful male individuals, in order to reveal the part played, for example, by Black women domestic workers in the Black freedom movement? Regimes of racial segregation were not disestablished because of the work of leaders and presidents and legislators, but rather because of the fact that ordinary people adopted a critical stance in the way in which they perceived their relationship to reality. Social realities that may have appeared inalterable, impenetrable, came to be viewed as malleable and transformable. And people learned how to imagine what it might mean to live in a world that was not so exclusively governed by the principle of white supremacy. This collective consciousness emerged within the context of social struggles. During the era of the 20th century Black freedom movement, the human beings whose predicament most approximated those of slaves from whom they were descended, were Black women domestic workers. We're referring to women who cleaned house, who cooked, who were laundry women.
As a matter of fact, during the 1950s, some 90% of all Black women were domestic workers. And given the fact that the majority of people who rode buses in Montgomery, Alabama in 1955 were Black domestic workers, why is it so difficult to imagine and acknowledge what must have been among these Black domestic workers? This amazing collective imagination of a future world without racial, gender, and economic oppression. Even though we might not know the names of all of those women who refused to ride the bus from poor Black communities to affluent white communities in Montgomery, Alabama, it seems that we should at least acknowledge their collective accomplishment. That boycott would not have been successful without their refusals, without their critical refusals. Fannie Lou Hamer was a sharecropper and a domestic worker. She was a timekeeper on a cotton plantation in the 1960s, and she emerged as a leader of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and as a leader of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. She said, "All my life, I've been sick and tired, and now I'm tired of being sick and tired." In 1964, she achieved national prominence when she demanded that members of her Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, which was a racially integrated party, be seated at the Democratic National Convention at the expense of seats that were given to the all-white Democratic Party delegation. In many ways, she paved the way for Barack Obama.
This is also the sesquicentennial of the Emancipation Proclamation. I have thought that perhaps we were not asked to reflect on the significance of the Emancipation Proclamation because we might realize that we were never really emancipated. But anyway, at least we may be able to understand the dialectics of emancipation, because we still live in the popular myth that Lincoln freed the slaves and that this continues to be perpetuated. Lincoln did not free the slaves. And of course, popular narratives about the end of slavery produced by the pronouncing of this emancipation document by Abraham Lincoln erase the agency of Black people themselves. But there is something for which Lincoln should be applauded, I believe. And it is that he was shrewd enough to know that the only hope of winning the Civil War resided in creating the opportunity to fight for their own freedom. And that was the significance of the Emancipation Proclamation.
And in this connection, I'd like to evoke W.E.B. Du Bois.
The Civil War meant emancipation and how the Black worker won the war by a general strike, which transferred his labor from the Confederate planter to the Northern invader, in whose army lines workers began to be organized as a new labor force.
Du Bois argues that it was the withdrawal and bestowal of the labor by slaves that won the war, and what he calls this army of striking labor
eventually provided the 200,000 soldiers, quote, whose evident ability to fight decided the war. And these soldiers included women like Harriet Tubman, who was a soldier and a spy and had to fight for many years in order to be granted later on a soldier's pension.
In the aftermath of the war, we find one of the most hidden eras of U.S. history, and that is the period of radical Reconstruction. This is an era that is rarely acknowledged. We have Black elected officials, the development of public education.
As a matter of fact, former slaves fought for the right of public education. The fight was for non-commodified education. As a matter of fact, white children in the South,
poor white children who had no education, gained access to education as a direct result of the struggles of former slaves.
And so we see this dialectical development of the Black liberation movement. There is this freedom movement, and then there is an attempt to narrow the freedom movement so that it fits into a much smaller frame, the frame of civil rights. Not that civil rights is not immensely important, but freedom is more expansive than civil rights. And as that movement grew and developed, it was inspired by and in turn inspired liberation struggles in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and Australia. It's not only a question of acquiring the formal rights to fully participate in society, but rather it was also about substantive rights. It was about jobs, free education, free health care, affordable housing, and also ending the racist police occupation of Black communities. And so in the 1960s, organizations like the Black Panther Party were created. And so I wonder, how are we going to address, for example, the 10-point program of the Black Panther Party? And I'll just summarize the 10-point program, and you might get an idea why there are not efforts underway to guarantee a large 50th anniversary celebration for the Black Panther Party.
Number 1 was,
we want freedom.
2,
Full employment.
3, an end to the robbery by the capitalists of our Black and oppressed communities.
It was anti-capitalist.
Number 4, we want decent housing.
Fit for the shelter of human beings.
Number 5, we want decent education for our people that exposes the true nature of this decadent American society.
We want education that teaches us our true history and our role in present-day society.
And number 6, which is especially significant in relation to the right-wing effort to undo the very small efforts made by the Obama administration to produce health care for poor people in the U.S.
We want completely free health care for all Black and oppressed people.
Number 7, we want an immediate end to police brutality and the murder of Black people, other people of color, and all oppressed people inside the United States. Number 8, we want an immediate end to all wars of aggression.
You see how current this feels?
Yes. And number 9, we want freedom for all Black and oppressed people now held in U.S. federal, state, county, city, and military prisons and jails.
We want trials by a jury of peers
Yes.
for all persons charged with so-called crimes under the laws of this country.
What is so interesting about this manifesto is that it recapitulates 19th century abolitionist agendas. And of course, the most advanced abolitionists in the 19th century recognized that slavery could not be ended by simply negatively abolishing slavery, but rather the institutions had to be produced that would incorporate former slaves into the new and developing democracy. You know, terrorism, which is represented as external as outside, is very much a domestic phenomenon. Terrorism very much shaped the history of the United States of America. Acknowledging continuities between 19th century anti-slavery struggles, 20th century civil rights struggles, 21st century abolitionist struggles. And when I say abolitionist struggles, I'm referring to the abolishment of imprisonment as the dominant mode of punishment. Acknowledging these continuities requires a challenge to the closures that isolates the freedom movement of the 21st century from the century preceding and the century following. But I've been speaking too long, so I want to close with an opening. All around the world, people are saying, we want to struggle to continue as global communities, to create a world free of xenophobia and racism, a world from which poverty has been expunged, and the availability of food is not subject to the demands of capitalist profit, where homophobia and transphobia can truly be called historical relics, along with the punishment of incarceration and institutions of confinement for disabled people, and where everyone learns how to respect the environment and all of the creatures, human and non-human alike, with whom we cohabit our worlds.
Look at what
we've done. Have no fear. Our blood, sweat, and tears soaked into this American soil. We belong here. Zora Neale would heal with her prose. Truth of Sojourner, our spirits rose to ride the train of the underground that Harriet Tubman ultimately found.